Hello there everyone, this is Jed Schlackman, and in this video I'm going to speak about the topic of trauma, and I've kind of labeled this talk Firewalking Through Trauma as a way to give an analogy for what actually causes us to experience trauma or to not experience trauma when we go through an event or experience that in theory would cause some type of distress. For those of you that are not familiar with firewalking, it's a practice that's often done in some type of a spiritual context or some type of a psychological or motivational context to show people that they have the power to be able to walk through hot coals and not get burned, to demonstrate to them the power of their own consciousness to influence that external outcome. So we can pause and examine this phenomena and think about why is it that under normal circumstances, if you just happen to step over a burning hot coal, your foot would be burned, whereas when you do it in the context of a firewalking ceremony, most of the time people are able to do that without getting a burn. Under a normal situation, we're not prepared, we're not in a state where we're able to go through that particular experience without having some type of a reaction of experiencing it as painful or stressful. When people do a firewalking ceremony, they've been guided to bring themselves into a particular state of consciousness where they have a deep faith and confidence that they're able to walk through the fire without having their foot burned. It's a state of kind of heightened or elevated energy, of a state you could say of being very clear and centered, of being fearless, of feeling strong and whole. In our daily lives, we're not often in that type of a state. We're often just going through our daily routine, attending to our responsibilities, our everyday concerns. And if something unexpected, something out of the ordinary occurs that's stressful, that we're not prepared for, we would have some type of a reaction to that. The reaction would often involve some type of emotion. So we might get angry at someone or something. We might become anxious or fearful. So in some way we would be thrown off balance by whatever has occurred. And we would give to that experience some type of meaning or interpretation. So if it's a physical injury, you might feel upset and bothered by having that injury, by having your daily routine disrupted, by having your ability to do the things you like to do limited by that injury, and whatever other meaning you might attach to that particular experience or occurrence. If we were able to be completely open to whatever we experience, to be in a sense in a state of non-resistance, then we are less likely to carry with us any lasting trauma or distress from that particular experience. Coming back to the example of firewalking, Since a person is in that state of balance and wholeness, of fearlessness as they go through that experience, then they're able to go through it without having a reaction, in a sense, without flinching as they step on the hot coals. By maintaining their consciousness in that state, they are able to have an influence upon the body, upon their energy field also, so that the body is not experiencing stress from that heat, and consequently the body does not react with the symptoms of being burned. This is not something that I recommend everyone go out there and test for themselves. However, it's important for the context of this discussion to understand how this functions or operates and why that is possible. We can bring this understanding into how we look at the psychological traumas that we encounter. There are things in our lives that at the time they occur, we're not prepared for them. We don't really have a mental construct to process them in a functional or healthy way, you could say. So we kind of get stuck in the reaction to a particular experience, a reaction where we may feel like a victim, where we may feel violated, where we may feel shocked by something that we've witnessed, where we may feel very sad or filled with grief, where we may feel anxious or afraid that we're not safe, that whatever has occurred or is occurring will repeat or will continue to occur. So we're in some type of a defensive or protective mode, often in an instinctual way. Something that's helpful to understand about how our consciousness works is that we have different parts or regions of our brain that are used to handle different phenomena or circumstances or different needs or activities. When we're functioning in a more focused, alert, cognitive type of state, where we're reading, studying, analyzing, problem solving, and so on, we're using what we might think of as the prefrontal cortex, the logical reasoning part of our brain, the executive part, the part that's able to bring information together, to analyze, to make clear and well thought out decisions. When we're in a situation that's kind of threatening, a situation where our survival might be at stake, where we need to react quickly, then that logical thinking part of the brain tends to be disengaged or disconnected. The energy isn't flowing to that area. It's focused now instead in the lower regions of the brain that are designed for instinctual behavior, for what we could think of as pre-programmed reactions that we need to survive. This is where our fight or flight or freeze mechanisms will kick in. If we're physically in danger, we certainly might need to flee, to run away. We also might be able to use our physical abilities to fight. And there are also situations where animals instinctively will freeze in order to protect themselves. We can understand that freeze mechanism by thinking of animals that play dead to protect themselves from predators. So if we can be perfectly still and not move, then we might be able to keep ourselves hidden or camouflaged. And we also may be able to convince an adversary or aggressor that they've already killed us and there's no need to continue to attack. So in those circumstances, the freeze mechanism serves a logical, biological purpose. Of course, as we go through our lives in a social context, we tend to play out some of those same types of reactions or survival mechanisms, and they often become counterproductive. They often end up interfering with our ability to have healthy relationships or to deal with our circumstances in a constructive and a useful manner. So if you're in a relationship and anytime you start to feel there's some type of conflict or stress there and you run away, you distance yourself from the other person, you isolate yourself, you don't communicate or do anything to resolve things, then eventually that's going to sabotage that relationship. However, you're not intentionally doing that. You're stuck in that reactive pattern, the pattern that's kind of programmed into us at a deep level to help us survive. Unless you can re-engage that higher part of your brain functioning, that more conscious part of your consciousness, then you may remain stuck in those old patterns. So as we seek to heal, to recover from stress and trauma, we want to kind of bring our brain and our consciousness more into a state of wholeness, where we can access that thinking, that rational part of our mind, where we can make more sensible decisions, where we can slow down and think things through rather than reacting impulsively. To accomplish this, we often need to go back to our original traumatic and stressful experiences and resolve them. We've actually been stuck in a state of incomplete processing of those experiences. We've had that split in our consciousness where the logical, rational mind and the instinctive, protective, intuitive mechanism have been split off from each other. So we're only kind of working with half of our mind, with half of our brain, as we deal with these particular experiences or memories. So if we could practice different methods of bringing ourselves into a state of balance and centeredness, into a state of wholeness, and carrying that particular state of consciousness into our reviewing of whatever traumatic memory we have a better opportunity to resolve that trauma. We can observe and review that experience from that perspective or state of wholeness, rather from that reactive pattern of just responding out of a need for survival. So we're shifting from the survival mode into the mode of being a whole, balanced being, into a being that is fully present, not needing to escape or run away, or to react impulsively to survive. We can use different meditative practices. We can use a variety of mind-body healing methods. Methods such as energy psychology, EMDR as an example, emotional freedom technique. We can use body-oriented methods, exercises like yoga and Tai Chi, where we're focusing on bringing energy through our whole body rather than just having our energy scattered or split. We can use hypnosis, where we're bringing ourselves into a calm state and then using some type of a peaceful situation or setting that we anchor ourselves to, and then carrying that consciousness to review a particular memory or experience that may have been unsettling, so that this time we can look at that situation from a higher perspective. We can create a different narrative or meaning for that experience, one where we're no longer the victim, where we no longer need to react for our safety or survival, where we can actually see ourselves as not defined by that experience, where we know ourselves as fundamentally healthy and whole, and not limited by having to react to that particular stress. As we use these different healing resources, we'll find that the trauma no longer has the impact or effect upon us that originally or initially did. We're no longer finding ourselves reacting, going into that stress response mode as we recall or think about that experience. We become more of just a calm observer, where we can understand what happened, we can understand our past response to that situation, while we recognize that we don't have to continue that reaction anymore. We don't have to remain in a fight or flight or freeze mode. We can be centered and present. We can actually pause and think about how we're responding, on what would be the most productive or effective way of dealing with our current situation or life experience. The more we practice this, the more we're able to evolve to be a full functioning being, and the better prepared we will be to handle any future stress that may arise. So these are skills that we can use not only for resolving or completing the processing of the past, but this can also help us prepare for any future unexpected event or any unplanned phenomena. Life brings surprises and challenges. This is something that we can't avoid, but we can enhance our ability, our preparedness for coping with those challenges, for having the skills to keep ourselves centered, to have all of our energy available to us, and the full range or spectrum of our consciousness available to handle and process what we're encountering. I hope that this gives each of you some insight into what causes our experience of trauma and post-traumatic stress, and also how we can resolve or quote-unquote cure those particular patterns of traumatic response and reaction. One important thing to realize is that our experience of trauma is not completely dependent on the external phenomena. So there is whatever external reality that is manifesting or unfolding. In the example of firewalking, the reality would be that there are those very hot coals on the ground. However, when you step on them, it's the meaning that your mind-body system gives to that that's actually creating the effect or reaction that you're going through. That's why some people are able to do that without getting burned. Similarly, with all the things that we encounter in our lives, we are giving some type of meaning to those phenomena. We're creating a story in our consciousness that informs how we're reacting to that particular phenomena. So one person that sees a murder or some type of destructive event may have a very traumatic reaction to that. They may go into this state of fear or anxiety and have difficulty settling themselves, difficulty getting past that, moving beyond that state. While there may be another person who has actually been in some way prepared to handle that situation, to remain centered, to not be in that hyper-aroused neurological state or emotional state, and to quickly move beyond that situation without being stuck in it, without being in that anxious mode, without their mind continuing to react or to attempt to resolve that particular memory. So in this sense, there is a subjective aspect to trauma. People aren't going to have a uniform response to any particular external trigger. It depends greatly upon our own subjective processing of whatever we're perceiving. So there's the external phenomena, there is our perception of that phenomena, and then there's also our interpretation of what we are perceiving. So there are these different layers, different elements to how our reaction is being created. And we have the power to intervene in all these different layers or levels to do things that can help us resolve those stressful feelings, help us bring our body back into a state of equilibrium, and help us allow our mind to let things go, to release whatever has been experienced, so that we can move forward and be more fully present in whatever comes next in our life. I hope that this discussion has given each of you some insight, some useful input into how you can handle stress and trauma, how you can, in a sense, become better prepared to cope with whatever challenges may arise in your life. I appreciate each of you for taking your time to view this video. I invite you to watch more of my YouTube videos and also to visit my website at www.phinsights.com. That's PHINSIGHTS.com. for now, I want to wish each of you a wonderful day. Namaste.